everyone, welcome to the Data Protection Made Easy podcast. Today is episode 24 and it's GDPR news, and I'm with Kane today. How are you? Welcome back.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm well, how are you?
I'm all right. It was a really nice episode, wasn't it? I always like to talk about news, but a lot going on, particularly the international transfers matters. A lot is going on, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it felt like a very political week, in fact. Lot of focus on the public sector, namely the potential that the EU-US framework is going to be at risk of, effectively no longer being in use and no longer being able to be used by organisations, which of course is going to have a massive knock-on effect for organisations in the UK as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we spoke a little bit about that. We spoke a little bit about Donald Trump. A little bit about the government on the UK side with Andy Burnham as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Spoke a little bit about the police and good old fashioned ICO as always. But there's cases. These news sessions are always a great opportunity to keep up to date with the things that you probably usually wouldn't. Unless you're on LinkedIn a lot or you keep really up to date with the news. Always a really interesting session. How did you find it, Kate?
Yeah, it was really good. I mean, I think that political side is always my hot topic for me, so I really enjoy it. But it was nice to explore different perspectives in understanding what would be potentially like a risk-based approach, what types of due diligence you should carry out, etc. You should consider a little bit beyond the data protection security sides, considering these new political challenges happening in the world. But we will leave it to it. I hope you have a nice weekend and enjoy the episode. Thank you.
Take care, guys.
I feel that I have not seen you for absolutely ages, so I'm trying to survive without you.
It is hard. It is hard. I'm sure everyone's probably struggled a little bit this week.
Yeah.
Bless their hearts, yeah.
Yes. No, but it's been, great.
No.
No, it's been great. I can't speak now. So we were reviewing our internal documentation and our information governance framework. So I think this week was really much dedicated to actually review, making sure that it's up to date with the due changes as well with the stairs. A lot of work on that, as well as delivering training. Yesterday I delivered training on data breaches, which was really nice actually. I decided to go around, instead of like the theory, I decided to go around a couple of scenarios. And I came across actually one thing that I would like to touch today, but I will leave you the word now. That is actually the report on the data breach from 2025.
Jump right in if you want to jump in.
Quite interesting. I would just let me just double check where is it, because I would like to share the thing as well. Give me just a sec. So here we are. So every year, the IBM publishes a cost of a data breach report, which looks at real data breaches around the world to understand what they cost organizations, how long they actually take to deal with this, and what are actually the trends that are emerging. The last year's report, so to 2025, for the first time in 5 years, the average global cost of a data breach has fallen slightly to 4.44 million, which stays saying that it's falling, but it still sounds amounts like 5 million.
Big amount of money.
Isn't really like in American dollars. However, the report also highlights that the cyber threats continue to evolve, now particularly with AI becoming an increasingly important area to concern. And I was like just going with this in terms of like the report itself, and there's something that I shared actually on Monday with our internal group, that there are biggest sort of like industries or sectors where we can see that where the money are going more and the trend is more in terms of data breaches,
right,
where the healthcare is the biggest one in terms of sector that face the biggest like data breaches in terms of money, in terms of costs. And obviously reflecting the value of sensitive patient information to criminals. Or healthcare organizations took the longest time to identify and contain breaches. 279 days was the average, which means more than 9 months to identify and to do something about it, which is actually concerning. We are talking about almost a year.
Yeah. I wonder what comes into that. Obviously, you think that they're bound to be a little bit more of a target because of the nature of their organisation, I suppose, and the fact that they probably are more of a cyber target naturally. Which I can kind of understand and expect to an extent. But I wonder what it is that is like sort of systematically causing these delays. I mean, 9 months is a long time. I thought you was going to say that was kind of like the antithesis. That was like
No, it's
yeah.
actually even worse. It's the average.
It's interesting. I wonder if it's like can be a couple of things, can't it? It can be a lack of sort of training and culture around all elements of healthcare. You know, so maybe most of the business who are fairly decently trained and understand their obligations, and some others who aren't, or some elements of, especially sort of like public healthcare with the NHS. There might be some brackets of the NHS that are actively identifying these a lot quicker than others.
Yeah.
Especially if the training isn't sort of like carried out the same between all different like lines of people, different line managers, different people who run the respective services potentially. Or maybe it's more of a system thing. Maybe the system is struggling to pick up on these issues, or just natural sort of system errors that we're having. Or it could be, there's just a good old sort of lack of procedural stuff.
Yeah, maybe. And I think as well is associated with potentially a lack of budget on their side to actually bet on these sort of like technical measures. And if they don't have the money, or at least if they don't have the budget to bet on these types of resources, and now with AI increasing, and probably they are not even ready to deal with this, with these new threats, potentially like will be an increase on these data breaches. But still, I mean, I will probably even identifying these sort of like problems, etc. 279 days is a long time.
It is a long time. It's relatively hard to excuse.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't. Obviously, it's hard to say without the further details. Do we know about any more of the sectors that were impacted or were covered more broadly as a sector other than healthcare?
Yeah, so the report reflects like loads of sectors: IT, healthcare, yes, IT, technology, pharmaceuticals, hospitality, transportation, consumer communications, etc. Definitely healthcare, all considered, was the biggest one.
Yeah, so it has education on there as well, which is interesting. I think probably for me, educational probably more comes from a training standpoint. I think from what I've understood in working with the educational sector, which I've probably got a fair bit of experience with now after some of the work that we've done at DPP, is you find that a lot of the educational sector has really, really good, strong data protection officers, can sometimes have quite good teams, but they tend to be quite significantly under-resourced and they're kind of against the cosh a little bit. And you find kind of fighting that balance sometimes of the internal staff, so your office staff and your internal functions, as well as your actual just day-to-day teaching staff. Trying to find an approach that works for both of those parties, I felt when I was doing a piece of work on it, felt a little bit difficult actually, because there is a little bit of a difference in what both of them need to know, the level of data that they're exposed to. And it's probably a lot easier to get all the internal staff in a room and train them, as opposed to the teachers who are actively sort of like working with children day to day. They don't really have the same kind of time. And if there is a breach that happens, the chances that, again, they even have the real estate going on with everything else that's going on in their life as a teacher, that's probably the last thing that they're thinking about. They've got a lot of other significant things to worry about. So I always found that was quite a challenge, and what I've tend to found is that they also kind of struggled with identifying them within sufficient times as well. Especially when it's more towards like teaching staff as opposed to internal staff. I think there's like a bit of a different. Well, I don't think there is a difference there, and it can be quite difficult from what I've seen, because I think it's very different tonally and expectation wise. So I can kind of understand why they're on there. And again, when I was working with the educational sector as much as I was, you really see how many breaches and stuff that they do actually deal with. It is quite a significant amount for most of the schools that we were working with. As I say, there was a point in time when we were working with, I'm not sure about the numbers now, but around about 200, 300 schools. So we've seen a lot of it really. So it was definitely really interesting. But you can see from the figures that some of these are obviously things like entertainment, pharmaceuticals, media are obviously the big targets for
cyber attacks.
cyber criminals. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one just point to highlight to finalize just to do this report analysis is obviously the AI now is on the hot topic, particularly on cyber, and around 30% of organizations experience a breach involving an AI model application, and 97% of those organizations admitted they did not have any appropriate access controls in place or anything around AI to actually protect themselves, which I think, well, unfortunately, like in theory, it should be in place, and we should say, well, what are you doing? Obviously, you should already contain this, particularly people that actually are hired to contain these measures, to have these measures in place. But actually, in reality, and practically speaking, is something that I don't think people are actually aware what does that actually mean.
Yeah.
Because with cyber and cyber attacks, old school speaking, I would say, normally it needs to be, I don't know, when I think about a cyber attack, I'm thinking about automatically like a group of people around the table, like just hacking some sorts of etc. Whereas now you just need potentially one individual, an AI platform,
Yeah,
and
maybe
they do it everything
a very
for you.
particularly good AI
Exactly.
platform. Yeah, it's probably opening the door for it a little bit. You know, as well considering we spoke probably a fair few months ago now about Anthropic and the fact that obviously a lot of people are using Claude and similar tools for coding at the moment, and that was finding to present a bit of an issue, wasn't it, with the fact that it was the Anthropic itself, the Mythos version of it, was able to identify vulnerabilities in websites, not just their own. And obviously that is a potential concern. I think it is something that actually maybe got rectified. I can't remember. I think they took that element of it down and they just reintroduced it. Yeah, they did, didn't they? Yeah, it got shut down. But I think I've seen recently they reintroduced it. But I can't say for certainty. But
We have a big supporter of cloud here with us.
yeah, and the back rooms.
But a lot on the news, don't you think? Like aside from the
Yeah.
data breach report, have you seen anything?
Well, there was one real big thing, wasn't there, which I've kind of missed, admittedly, because as Kate was mentioning, I was kind of off most of this week, you know, dealing with some stuff. But one thing I did see, even whilst I was off, was in relation to Donald Trump and the EU-US data privacy framework potentially being at risk of being, you know, given the boot, really, for all intents and purposes. If you've been listening to Data Protection Made Easy for a while, you'll know that we go deep on the topics that actually matter, whether it's SARS, ROPAs, or international transfers.
And one of the things we hear all the time is, where do I go to learn more? Where is the training that matches this level of detail?
Well, we've got an answer for that. Data Protection People is launching its e-learning platform on Monday, the 13th of July.
And courses were built around the exact topics we cover on this podcast, only in the self-paced format you can work through in your own time.
It's affordable, online, and available from day one. Head to dataprotectionpeople.com/training courses to find out more. That's the only real way to put it, isn't it? Which was, I don't know, I feel a certain kind of way about it, I guess, because it was it was a massive shock when I first read it anyway.
Yeah.
Because obviously we've got to think about it from the implications in the UK law. Obviously, if the EU-US framework was to no longer be in effect and to provide that sort of adequacy and being part of the framework, that is going to have a massive knock-on effect to UK businesses.
Absolutely.
Because the vast majority of them, if not all of them, transfer some kind of data to the US, and that felt like a much easier thing in the past year or so.
Yeah.
It is really going to reopen that door again and put you through the fun of your TRAs again, of your
absolutely. There will be
46 safeguards again. And I'm sure if that is to happen, DPP are going to significantly busy themselves up again with US data transfers, which will
I'm sure that Mark will be very excited to hear about.
I'm sure Mark is jumping up and down in joy just thinking about it.
Absolutely.
But it is really interesting, isn't it, Kay? I mean, it's a weird decision, I guess, first and foremostly. But I don't know if you have any thoughts about it in terms of like I mean, I think it's clear why they want to change it based on what Trump is suggesting.
Yeah.
But what the broader sort of implications of it might be.
I think just a quick context for the people that were not very aware of this news. So the Supreme Court ruled that Donald Trump, or well, in this case, U.S. president, has the power to dismiss leaders of independent federal agencies, including members of the Federal Trade Commission. So that obviously matters because the FTC plays a very key role in enforcing the commitments made by U.S. organizations under the DPF, the Data Privacy Framework, which allows personal data to flow from Europe to certified organization in the US. But following this judgment, and I must say that I just came aware of this because Max Schrems were very involved on this, particularly on LinkedIn. It's quite a very hot topic for him. And though IB, the Privacy Campaign Group, has argued that this FTC is no longer independent, and they are asking the European Commission to withdraw the adequate decision, and he has confirmed that he intends to challenge the framework before the Court of Justice of the European Union. So I think we already seen this happen a couple of years ago with the Privacy Shield.
Yeah.
A little bit. I don't know, like everything to be revoked and withdraw, etc. But to be honest, as Shai is mentioning, I am actually not very shocked with this. I think, unfortunately, making these type of groups and regulators and these independent agencies actually completely changing the rules and making the not being independent anymore, it causes lots of problems. And now I think the US, even if you do have organizations that have, I don't know, data centers in the UK, data centers in Europe, international transfers can always occur anyway if there is any sort of like connection. So the US, in the end of the day, will be always related, and they have the monopoly of, well, the business, I would say, in like Europe and in the worldwide. So this is a massive. It's not the same thing as there was a UK EU, not renewing the adequacy regulation. I think this will potentially have more detrimental effects. Aside from the transfer risk assessment, aside from the fact that we have a international data transfer agreement in place in the UK extension, etc., we cannot forget that if we do a transfer risk assessment, imagine, we cannot forget that America or in the US is in war currently. And I think that the fact when you are transfer risk assessment and you are identifying the risks that might be involving these countries, for example, now that will be considered as well. Like, because obviously, I don't know, but my opinion is if there is a war going on or some political challenges, that country will be potentially more up to be, I don't know, cyber attacked and some sort of like connection.
The TRA is a risk-based exercise, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, whenever you look for at least our form, which I think mirrors the ITO's in some respect, looks specifically in other related either laws or situations currently in the country that could or may have an impact on the data that is being transferred. And I think obviously it's very probably easy to look at that broadly and think, well, obviously the chances of X, Y, Z happening is unlikely or rare. But in an instance like this, obviously, where one, cyber attacks and cyber criminals have definitely become more prolific, and two, obviously the US is in a little bit of an interesting spot politically and in general. It does raise a question, I guess, if that will have an impact on the proposed risk of the data being shared and transferred. I mean, probably not in a lot of cases, but I feel like it possibly could be likely. I mean, you've always got to look at these things from all respects. I mean, when we were looking at them before, even things looking at the rights of individuals, not just the data protection rights, but their rights of them as people, as normal people, and if that will have an impact and potential impact. Obviously, the big one previously with US was the FISA, wasn't it? Which was the surveillance laws, which have always kind of been a little bit of an issue, haven't they? In respect of when we're looking at some of the impact assessments and stuff in relation to the country. That was always a little bit of a weird one, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest with you, I have this is a topic very dear to me. I just don't understand how is it possible the president of one of the biggest countries in the world that has such a terms of power and connections with the rest of the countries, etc. This can happen. I just can't understand how is this even viable to be able to happen, and the consequences are not even measured. And we are not saying that this is sort of there's nothing in place. The law is still the data privacy framework is still in place. But I think you do agree with me. Probably what will still potentially highly recommend for you to revisit your record of processing activities, understand
Sure.
where you stand in terms of international transfers, which countries actually you are relying on the TPF, and there is actually extension with your organizations and the suppliers, and potentially take I don't know, reasonable measures, preventive measures to, okay, if this happened, am I ready? Am I prepared to
Yeah.
still have some sort of relationship with these organizations?
Got to be an element of
Yeah,
preparedness now, hasn't there?
absolutely.
Coming in with this
Because it involves a lot of governance, doesn't it? If it actually goes and goes further, this will involve a lot of governance that organizations, but they already struggle a little bit with data protection, implement all these measures, etc. And they have definitely a lot to think about. And they were relieved. Okay, we have now kind of an adequacy regulation in the US. We have, like, for example, Microsoft and MailChimp, like these big organizations that they actually have the centers in the US. We are protected, but now, actually, no, you're not.
Well,
Now I need to revisit potentially.
I always thought it was shaky at best anyway, and you know, I think the reason they opened it up was really because economically it was a good decision, and then they didn't want to act like a barrier, and I always thought it was a little bit shaky anyway. So I don't. Yes, I am surprised, but it's also hard not to be surprised as well. Especially, obviously, you don't want to speak on things too politically, really. At least not here. But
Non-bias on our
yeah, of
side.
course. But it's it does set an interesting precedent, and I think organisations really probably have to maybe start taking a few backward steps. I think I've always looked at adequacy a certain kind of way anyway, where I do think it definitely helps the safe flow of data, but I think sometimes it's treating as there's an element of ignorance that comes with it, with the assumption that everything is fine.
Yeah.
Just because a country does have adequacy, I don't necessarily think that means just ignoring everything else and cracking on. Yeah, I mean the rest of Chapter 5 won't apply, but you know we've still got to make sure that data remains safe and secure.
No, absolutely. I agree with that. I know that I had actually, I think I had a chance to actually say this a couple of, well, long episodes ago. But I have a client, a charity, and they rely on this HR system that they are based in Israel.
Okay.
And Israel has actually adequacy regulation, and everything is sorted in this. It looks like it, but obviously, as we unfortunately were aware of, Israel is part of the one war that is ongoing. And to be honest, my recommendation was actually, it's true that there is adequacy regulation going on, but the main goal of these adequacy regulations being in place is actually we need to guarantee that the rights and freedoms of the individuals that are part of this data flow and that this processing activity involving these two parties is protected.
Sure.
How can you actually reassure these individuals that you are hosting, well, you are relying on a supplier that is hosting this information, like very sensitive, particularly HR, very sensitive, etc., in the country that is currently with some political challenges. I'm quite sure that potentially that organization in specific will not be targeted to obviously a cyber attack or something, but it's something that should be considered. And you're absolutely right. I think that clients and organizations think, okay, these are adequacy regulations, so we are absolutely fine. We don't need to think about anything else unless this is not renewed, because obviously the data framework has a date to it, the expiry date needs to be renewed in a quite regular basis if anything changes from that. So unless anything changes, we are absolutely fine and protected, and it shouldn't be like this. We should revisit everything and making sure that actually that the sequences still maintain the same. And I think, considering all these political challenges right now, I'm not sure if I would still recommend. Well, if I will not recommend actually in carrying out potentially additional safeguards, because probably I would. If there is a supplier that there was no data centers in Europe, etc., etc. Probably if there was all based US, I would potentially definitely recommend additional safeguards just in case.
Yeah. I mean, risk, just like vulnerability, is fluid, isn't it? It's not static.
Yeah.
And it's bound to change. Even if a country does that, like adequacy doesn't mean there's not an increased risk that may occur, may not occur. But it's all about in the realms of is what reasonable. You know, what is a reasonable risk? What is a reasonable action?
Absolutely. Yeah.
As opposed to the reaction. But yeah, something to keep the eyes out for people who. Pretty much everybody here probably should be keeping some kind of eye on it, and obviously we'll do our best to keep you guys posted as things do progress.
Yeah. Katerina actually wrote a brilliant article on this, so please stay tuned.
Yeah, that's
to receive an article or a link that Miles will show you shortly on that.
Yeah, no, that's a great
But
point.
other than the news,
yeah, I mean we've got a few more bits, haven't we? There's a real small one I wanted to touch on. I want to speak a little bit about the police. So and we had another post again in relation to the ICO. Of course, with everything that was happening with the commissioner. And I seen a post from John Baines that was, and it was only really a brief one because I don't think there's too much to be said here. But that allegedly there'd been a real, you know, a negative culture in general that the ICO has kind of adopted. Obviously, as we'd seen from the stuff occurring with the now ex-commissioner, is that there was claims of bullying and harassment, which have obviously had grounds, which is why he's been sort of removed from post. But it seems that this has been something that has not only been occurring in the reactive, but for quite a long period of time, as well as from some surveys that have been undertaken, also throughout other members of staff within the ICO, and a lot of people claiming that there have been a lot of bullying and harassment, and it's been quite a toxic and negative workplace. I mean, I don't think it's. Oh, I've got a bird on it. What horrible.
Some technical issues.
Save me.
Save me, Miles.
Is it? Yeah, good.
Well, someone got to laugh at mine.
The save Miles.
I appreciate that.
I mean, you know that you will be always bullied.
Unless the person who unmuted actually had something that they wanted to add, then absolutely please feel free to do so. I'll just make sure I'm quiet so you don't have to hear to me, because I wouldn't want to subject you to that. But if you did want to have something to add, then absolutely feel free. But the point was really what the point is that it seems that there's been a little bit of a toxic sort of environment at the ICO recently. Whether that's had an impact on some of the stuff that relates to us and the actual workload coming out of the ICO.
Yeah.
Impossible to say. Probably not, but maybe so. But it is really hard to say. But maybe, a new change for the ICO is a good thing. And, with a better workplace and better culture, you'd like to think that better work would come out of it potentially. So, just a small sort of little like attention piece there. But quite sad that people have had to be subjected to that. And I'm very, I feel really sorry for anyone who's felt like that in the workplace. And hopefully it will mean better things for the ICO in the future. We can hope.
Absolutely. I mean, I just shared with you in the group and the Public and Commercial Services Union. In terms of link, it said that mentioned that these events raise wider questions about leadership, governance, and organizational culture. And unfortunately, this behavior was able to develop and persist within the organization without being effectively challenged. And these completely unacceptable levels of bullying, harassment, and discrimination. But you'll be able to see detail by detail and numbers within the link that we shared with you.
Yep.
Go for it.
No,
because I see we have the iPhone, and I want to about that one.
So have you recently, right? I've been out and about, and I recently saw a police van, a couple of policemen outside of it with a camera that said facial recognition in New South Wales.
Yeah.
And this is interesting. And
And then you try to look for something else, and you won't find it.
I was having a little.
It's like, where is my notice or any sort of like details on privacy
They've
information?
got the sign.
No.
They had the signage, I guess. I'll give them that much. But yeah, there's nothing else around. I don't want to look around for too long in respect of not looking suspicious, I suppose. Yeah, well, I was having a little nosy around. It was in a really weird place in town as well. I was wondering why it was deployed there. But I did see it like a fair few weeks ago now. But it brings me on to the actual sort of piece of the news. Was the results of an investigation in relation to some predictive and analytics, which has been operated by Bristol City Council and Avon and Somerset Police. Just the published results have just come out basically. They'd been using a system which would store things like police intelligence, mental health records, and even things like school meal details, which is really bizarre, on about 500,000 individuals. Basically, they'd use some kind of machine learning to assign risk scores to individuals, both adults and children, to map out potential threats. And obviously, this is something that we're seeing quite consistently in the news, and this kind of like recognition and predictive sort of threat mapping is something that the police are obviously thinking and seemingly doing at the moment. The report itself highlighted that at least 23 of the predictive models were developed, and that it found that over 300,000 people identified a crime risk for them, but the program itself was found to lack transparency. So at least 2 other risk scoring models were quietly abandoned by council staff, and they moved to different ones as they deemed that the actual model was untrustworthy. And they'd found that 36,000 of the performance scores were also indicated as being predictively poor, basically.
Yeah.
It raises an issue, doesn't it? When we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, and then maybe even longer now, we were talking about how the rollout of this, I think initially it was meant to be for some kind of, they wanted to use it in, I believe, some sort of Tommy Robinson protest, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And they wanted to use it for that. Seemingly, there's been a lot of movement that's been going on with quite a lack of knowledge going on in towards the public, seemingly to not fantastic levels of success. Even though they want to look to roll this out nationally, they're finding that 36,000 performance scores, granted between 500,000 people is a decent average, the implication on those 36,000 people could have been or may have been relatively significant. It's a really dangerous game when you're working with data to such a degree, especially to such a sensitive degree. And the data itself was really strange. As I say, it was things like school meals. And the details of those. I think it was if you were.
Sheldon's making the point that like chicken nuggets and all the sausages.
Well, yeah. What is it for? Is it to identify if they're getting free school meals? Is that somehow an indicator of potential crime? I'm not sure what point they're trying to make there. If I had to make a link to anything, I don't know if they're trying to link an individual's financial status to crime, which I don't think is quite right, obviously. But I don't know what, I couldn't actually tell what they would even possibly use something like that for.
But I think you are the fact that you are making that point actually is another problem that is raised. I think the usage, and I think I'm a strong believer that AI, I know that is here to stay, but if as much as I can to stay away from it, I will. I'll try. But anyway, I don't think even the usage of AI is actually the big problem. I think the big problem is the fact that large of amounts of information, sensitive or even special category data, is actually being processed, and then people are not even aware that how the information is being used from transparency purposes. So even us that we are reading this report, and the information that is actually being shared without outside and externally explaining this and what is actually happening, it's not even informative enough for you to understand the purpose of this usage. And don't get me wrong, as we've seen, like with the police for the I don't know, it's not manifestums, what do you call it, the strikes, and going on, and I appreciate there are so many benefits associated with this. It's efficient, can be more practical, but then we are talking about at the same time the privacy of people. We are talking about their rights. We are talking about transparency. We're talking about the most potentially so intrusive that's or even meaningful in terms of like if it's like chicken nuggets with a sausage, this kind of thing. But it's that, isn't it? It's just for me, it's weird just imagine to understand how can this information be processed in large amount of data. People are potentially not even aware the what, the how, and the results could be worst case scenario, people actually being discriminated by it because potentially there is not even human oversight over it. And then there are decisions actually being made based on that information provided by these tools. And that's it.
How do you even go about assessing a threat score other than potential criminal convictions? What do these models think makes a criminal or a potential criminal or a potential threat, I suppose is how they're wording it? You know, surely that is inherently biased anyway in its
Absolutely.
thinking, because how, again, it has people's mental health conditions, which yes, potentially may play a part in a crime, may not, but I'm sure there is some kind of psychological link there in some respect. But it's about what they're using the other kind of data for. And you say in the areas, are you worried that they're going to start basically profiling people?
Yeah.
And that is the worry, because it's definitely something the police want to push forward with. But currently, I wouldn't feel suitable if it is showing as many poor results as it is. Obviously, as was mentioned, there's a lack of transparency currently because they keep shifting these models about, which means that individuals are having a little bit of a lack of control and knowledge over their data and how it's been stored and used. I mean, it's something that I'd have to look into more because I haven't seen any of the older systems. But if they've already booted off 2 systems which are poor in their results, how many are they going to go through until they're satisfied? How much data is then potentially still in the ether? We don't know how solid and secure that this company's practices are, because they haven't been as open as you would realistically like. Because this is the most recent time I've actually heard about this technology being used, apart from the last time we spoke about it a couple of months ago. But I'm seeing it being used actively in the public. As I say, I saw it.
Yeah.
I saw it in Leeds just recently.
Yeah.
Again, for what reason, I actually do not know. I mean, it wasn't anywhere sort of on. It was just off Briggate. It was just off Briggate, if anybody knows.
Just I know you mean. Okay.
Yeah.
Probably not me and Marquis.
No, it
No.
wasn't. It wasn't even anywhere like that where you think that
No, where is like
where everyone likes, where all the drunk people like to fight on a weekend. It wasn't even that. It was way away. It was actually like super far away from anything. It's closer to the market.
It's just weird for me. I feel particularly I feel even more uncomfortable because we're talking about public authorities, and I'm not sure if these like organization, well, public authorities, etc., think that the fact that obviously there is the security side of things and in principle there is this preventing criminal offenses and etc., that automatically makes it justifiable, that they feel that there is absolutely no need for further information, for further details on this. And I think they actually, more than the private providers, they should be actually the ones, like as a role model, they should be the ones actually proving how things actually should work. And as you were mentioning, this is definitely not the first case and definitely will not be the last. How can we still have some questions around this? How can we still not be sure on how to things are actually being done?
Yeah, we
How they have
shouldn't
not
even be in a
purpose.
place where we're questioning it.
Absolutely
Should
not.
we?
They
I
should
mean,
be. They just should be the ones. Okay, actually, people are identifying this major problem. We probably in the past we failed to provide this information. However, it's already being discussed. Shall we actually now proactively make these points? Because if not, we'll be all over the news. We'll be questioned, and in the end of the day, we'll undermine our trust before them. I think.
no, 100%. I think you're right about them needing to act as role models. I don't think they do. I mean, when you look at a lot of the incidents that have happened this year alone in relation to public bodies, namely the government, in relation to personal data, obviously things like the MOD breach.
Yeah.
We've got the stuff
That's
with
a
the
big one.
police. It doesn't present the picture you want it to present. If we're meant to be and they're expecting that organisations can comply with the UK GDPR, well, then they need to demonstrate to me that they can also do it. Because if not, there's, it's a little ironic, isn't it? And it's not necessarily very fair.
No.
Because we're using things like automated means, I would expect to fully know, like I've got these questions about the rationale of the threat score.
Yeah.
Well, tell me, you're meant to tell me, explain it to me. Because if I don't know, then I don't think realistically you're being transparent enough, unless it is implausible to explain. But if it is, then I don't think the solution is very good if you can't possibly explain it to me.
Oh, it probably will be unproportional. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the issue,
Yeah.
and I see your point, Charlotte, about the sort of greater good mentality that sometimes people have with data protection.
It's also the excuse, isn't it?
Well, it's what it is. It is an excuse, isn't it?
Yeah.
If data protection has never existed to restrict anything, all it's really asking, in this case at least, is that you're at least very clear with people about how it's being used and that they can control it in a way that is safe and fair for people. And currently it might not be. You'd think that they'd actually, really care about the broader implications on other people about unlawful arrest, even just from a public image. Even if they were being selfish from a public image perspective, you think they would care. However, seemingly it doesn't seem like they are. It's a real real situation.
We expect that you are right.
Yeah. So.
That's just to before we go, I would just just make a point about, just because we're talking about public authorities, and I came around something around NHS. So I saw in the Telegraph and the Guardian that Andy Burnham, because the key is timer, resigned. So Andy Burnham probably can be our next prime minister, but they might reconsider the NHS contract with Palantir if he becomes prime minister. So for the ones that don't know, this company currently provides the technology behind an NHS federated data platform, a 7-year contract that is worth 330 million that supports data sharing across the NHS to improve patient care and operational efficiency. And this platform is being used for speed up cancer diagnosis and improve hospital discharge processes. But what is actually the controversy coming out here is because this platform is actually part of wider commercial relationships, including contracts with the Israeli military and U.S. immigration and customs enforcement, ICE. So a lot of concerns are being actually made around the usage of this platform that obviously has, it's not about just the technology itself, but obviously these kind of connections with other broader interests. And I guess my thoughts about this is, show the suppliers, and I think this will a little bit connected with the enterprise framework actually issue. That is, show the controllers in this case, when relying on suppliers, so should they actually assess way beyond the reassurance on the protection and cybersecurity side of things? Should we go a little broader than that and consider it potentially their ethics and their morals, what they actually, their interests, and what they're actually doing? Well, aside from what the direct relationship between these two parties will mean in the future if they decide to engage with. So I'm just wondering, because obviously there are, loads of organizations that we engage in a regular basis, Microsoft, HP, like the laptops ones, etc., that they have been involved in these scandals, that they are providing army and they're providing things with the military for these ongoing wars. So I'm just wondering, should we, our due diligence, go a little bit beyond the data protection and security reassurance?
It's a fair point. I mean, probably leave with a bit of an open-ending question, I guess, but ethics is a hard one, because do we expect that all these massive major corporations are particularly ethical? Probably not. I don't know, though. As I say, not to wander into anything too political, but it is a question that has to be asked sometimes. I mean, when you're looking in respect of the local authority, obviously public image is going to matter massively to the government, especially if it's going to potentially dictate or potentially allude to certain relationships and issues that could have international consequences, basically, and political consequences. But if you just, like you're a school, or you work in healthcare, or you're a housing association, I would always have a think on what the broader implications are on the data subjects in using a system that may have weird ethical ties or may have its own issues around it. I mean,
sometimes it's just not come in the news until something actually happens.
Exactly. Even just from the perspective of, I always look at, it's always good to know what they've been involved in the news, especially in respect to cyber, and if they have been, targets of stuff, because it is an implication, it's a risk that we have to be aware of. So it's always good to do your research broader than everything,
Absolutely.
Don't tie yourself up in knots and looking at it all, but it all builds that picture, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And realistically, you should only use contractors that you feel really comfortable using, and that you can actually build a decent relationship with as well, because you can be fighting a bit of an uphill battle sometimes, can't you? If you need help from these contractors and all of a sudden what you thought the relationship wasn't quite what it turned out to be. So yeah, it's always worth to look a little bit broadly on that. But I guess I'll probably pose that question to everybody. Listen, if you ever thought ethically about the contractors that you use, it's not something that's always at the forefront of my mind. You think about it, don't you?
Yeah.
Sort of nags the back of your head, but
I'm sure that probably if you are carrying out some sort of due diligence, and it's definitely some sort of like, I don't know, very special cat with that, very sensitive, probably something that you potentially will include as other considerations.
It's all about the case scenario, isn't it?
Yeah. I agree with you 100%. Yeah.
But yeah, I suppose on that note, we'll leave you that one to sort of scratch your head about. But yeah,
just finally with me with my scarf again, because we need to, fingers crossed, for Monday.
Both of us for Monday. So next week you'll, I guess by this time next week you'll see if me and Kate are pleased about the football anymore. If you see me on Friday with my England top on, just know that we won. If you don't care about football,
if you don't see, you'll cry.
Yeah, if I'm not here on Friday, it's probably because I'm quite upset somewhere. Same with Kate as well. If we're both not here, just know if you don't watch football, we've probably lost. But on that note, guys, we hope you all have a lovely weekend, and we will catch up with you next week on, I actually don't know what. Miles, do you know what it is? No, we'll get back to you. But keep your eyes out on the chat guide in relation to the blog that Kate mentioned, done by Katerina. I think it's a really interesting read.
Absolutely.
And yeah, sweet. On that note, guys, take care.
Thank you very much.
We'll catch you next week.
Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.